Judge Amelia Washington adjusted her rearview mirror and sighed. The long day at the courthouse had drained her, and all she wanted was to get home to her family. As she drove through the quiet suburban neighborhood, her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter asking when she'd be home for dinner. She was reaching for her phone at a red light when the flashing lights appeared behind her. License and registration, the officer demanded without so much as a greeting. Judge Washington noticed his badge read Officer Martinez. Of course, officer. May I ask what this is about? Suspicious activity. Step out of the vehicle. Judge Washington's heart sank. She knew this drill too well, not from her position on the bench, but from her experiences as a black woman in America. She complied, keeping her hands visible. I'm Judge Amelia Washington from the County Superior Court, she said calmly, presenting her judicial identification along with her driver's license. Officer Martinez barely glanced at it. Yeah, right. And I'm the president. Turn around. As he roughly handcuffed her, another officer, Stevens, arrived on the scene. What do we got, Martinez? Suspicious vehicle, fake ID. Claims to be some judge. Stevens laughed. They always got stories. Look at this hair, probably hiding drugs in there. Before Judge Washington could protest, Stevens produced electric clippers from his patrol car. Let's see what you're really hiding. This is assault. I demand you check my credentials properly. I have court tomorrow morning. Sure you do, lady. Hold still. The clippers buzzed to life. Years of carefully maintained natural hair fell to the pavement in dark chunks. Judge Washington closed her eyes, trying to maintain her dignity as her identity, both personal and professional, was stripped away on a roadside. Nothing here, Martinez. Just another crazy lady with delusions. They released her with a citation for failure to comply with officer instructions and drove away, leaving Judge Washington standing beside her car, running her fingers over her nearly bald scalp. The next morning, Judge Washington entered her courtroom wearing a judicial robe and a silk head wrap. Her bailiff, Tom, did a double take. Your Honor. Are you all right? We'll discuss it later, Tom. Let's proceed with the docket. The first case was a police misconduct hearing, Officers Martinez and Stevens versus the city, regarding their recent pattern of excessive force complaints. Both officers sat confidently at the defendant's table with their attorney, joking quietly among themselves. All rise for the Honorable Judge Washington, the bailiff announced. Officer Martinez looked up casually, then his face went white. Officer Stevens' mouth fell open. Judge Washington took her seat slowly, her eyes meeting theirs directly. The courtroom fell silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's pen. Gentlemen, Judge Washington said, her voice steady and clear, before we begin today's proceedings, I believe we have some prior interaction to address. Martinez leaned over to whisper frantically to his attorney, who looked confused and alarmed. Your Honor, the defense attorney stammered, I'm not sure what you're referring to, Officer Martinez. Officer Stevens, Judge Washington continued, do you recall our encounter yesterday evening at approximately 6:30 p.m. on Maple Street? The officers exchanged panicked glances. The prosecution attorney raised an eyebrow, suddenly very interested. Now, Judge Washington said, adjusting her head wrap slightly, let's proceed with this case regarding police misconduct. I assure you both, I will be absolutely fair and impartial in my judgment. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the courtroom. Officer Martinez raised a shaking hand. Your Honor, we would like to request a different judge for this case. Judge Washington smiled slightly. Motion denied, Officer Martinez. I believe I'm uniquely qualified to hear this case. After all, I have recent, first-hand experience with your methods. She looked down at the case file, then back up at the officers who had humiliated her just hours before. The court will note that both defendants are present. Let's begin with the evidence of misconduct, shall we? I'm particularly interested in hearing about your procedures for verifying identification and your policies regarding the treatment of citizens during traffic stops. As the morning progressed, the true scope of the officers' misconduct became clear. Multiple victims testified about similar treatment. People of color stopped without cause, searched inappropriately, and humiliated. Judge Washington listened to each testimony with professional composure, though those who knew her well could see the fire in her eyes. When it came time for sentencing, Judge Washington removed her head wrap, revealing her shorn scalp to the packed courtroom. Officers Martinez and Stevens, she began, yesterday evening, you failed to properly verify my identity, you assaulted me, you destroyed my personal property, and you violated my civil rights. But more importantly, the evidence shows this was not an isolated incident. You have systematically targeted and humiliated citizens based on the color of their skin. The courtroom was dead silent. However, as a judge, I must separate my personal experience from my professional duty. The evidence in this case speaks for itself. regardless of what happened to me personally. She looked directly at both officers. You are hereby suspended from duty pending a full investigation. You will undergo mandatory retraining on civil rights, proper identification procedures, and cultural sensitivity. Additionally, you will perform 200 hours of community service in neighborhoods you have patrolled. Officer Martinez started to speak, but Judge Washington held up her hand. Furthermore, I am recommending that the District Attorney's Office pursue criminal charges for the multiple civil rights violations documented in this case. The badge is not a license for prejudice, gentlemen. As the officers were let out, Judge Washington called after them, "Oh, and officers? Next time someone tells you they're a judge, you might want to actually check their credentials. You never know when you might see them again." The story made national headlines. Judge delivers justice after officers assault her during traffic stop. Judge Washington used her newfound platform to advocate for police reform and judicial accountability. She never grew her hair back quite the same way. Instead, she embraced shorter, natural styles and became a symbol of dignity in the face of injustice. Sometimes, she would tell law students, justice comes full circle in the most unexpected ways. The law is blind, but those who enforce it shouldn't be blind to their own prejudices. The officers were eventually convicted of civil rights violations. Officer Martinez resigned from the force, while Officer Stevens underwent extensive retraining and later became an advocate for police reform, often sharing the story of the night he learned that dignity and authority don't always look the way you expect them to. Judge Washington continued to serve with distinction, her courtroom becoming known as a place where true justice, impartial, fair, and blind to everything except the truth, was always served.